Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time and have a huge collection of videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, cosmology, character classes and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button below or backing me on Patreon, where you can get access to all of the scripts I write for these vids, if you prefer to read what I'm saying. I also have a Discord server with an active community, and of course, subscribe to me here for 2 videos uploads per week usually, and a live stream every weekend. Back to the Giant series. Today, one of the more obscure races of giants. The name itself is kind of a joke. The Verbeeg are indeed very big, but nowhere near as large as most other giants. In fact, many people just think they are a more intelligent offshoot of the ogre species, human and ogre crossbreeds, if you will, or perhaps the original form of the ogre before some calamity reduced the race's brain size to that of a walnut. In the game literature, they first appeared in the Monster Manual 2 for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, then again in Monstrous Compendium Annual No. 2 and the Monstrous Manual for 2nd edition AD&D. They also have a listing in the book Giantcraft, which I'll be quoting from later, for the Forgotten Realms setting, which places them firmly within Forgotten Realms giant folklore, as being the offspring of Othea, mother of all giants, and Ulutiu, an Arctic-dwelling demigod, which means that Verbeeg are divine relatives of the Firbolg, Fomorian, and the Vodkin giantkin, but not the ogres or the trolls, who are the offspring of Vaprak, who, in a twisted fashion, is one of the offspring of Anam's affairs with a proto-ogress and possible ancient demigoddess, who may have been one of his own offspring. But I would not mention that anywhere near an ogre once they eventually figure out what that means. Verbeeg are not worshippers of Ulutiu, though. They more commonly worship Corontor, one of Anam Allfather's original lesser deity sons. Before he met Othea, Corontor is a purely evil deity. He resides on the plain of Tartarus, at times ruling a frozen plain of ice, wherever hungry winter wolves await his orders to hunt across the land. He was once a great and beautiful being, but his exile by Anam, along with his hatred of his brother Stronmaus, has made him twisted and deformed, much like the Fomorians. Verbeeg, like all the giant kin, do tend to have a tendency to deformity, but nowhere near as badly as the Fomorians. The dwarves believed that their god, Clageddon Silverbeard, the father of battle, considers Corontor one of his greatest enemies, so they consider murdering Fomorians and Verbeeg as something which pleases Clageddon greatly. Verbeeg are not the most pious of people. You may spot a winter wolf head in a prominent place where they dwell, as this is the symbol of Corontor. There are other accounts that Corontor resides in Carceri, in the blasted layer of Menethus, on a planet called the Rack of Injustice, as reported by the Monster Mythology sourcebook and on Hallowed Ground sourcebooks. So, what does a Verbeeg look like, and what do they do? They look like very large and brutish humans, far more human than any ogre. The smallest Verbeeg can actually pass for an extremely large human. To give you some comparison, Sun Mingming is a professional basketball player from China, and he stands 7 feet 9 inches tall and weighs 340 pounds, which is 2.36 meters tall and 154 kilograms, which is pretty damn big, and he's a professional athlete. In comparison, an average male Verbeeg would be 9 feet tall and weigh 450 pounds. This is an average Verbeeg, which is 2.7 meters and 200 kilograms. So they loom over even the biggest humans and have gotten the nickname behemoths when people in human cultures don't know that they are in fact not related to humans at all. It gets even more confusing when we learn that, much like the Fomorians and the Firbolg, there are distinct racial groups within their ancestry that are not clearly defined by a different name. So if you run into a Verbeeg from the Feywild, they look quite different from the Verbeeg who have inhabited the spine of the world mountains for tens of thousands of years. Much like the Firbolg of Hartsvale and the frozen far north look very different from the much smaller, reclusive and fairly passive communities you find further south, which have been highlighted in 5th edition as a player character race. Verbeeg, by giant standards, are small and agile. They are highly capable spear fighters who use a shield and a spear in a similar manner to ancient Earth hoplites, except they don't wear a helmet that would restrict their vision, and they don't fight in formations, nor do they wear shin guards, and their armour is typically leather, studded leather. I know it sounds kind of weird for a race of 9-foot tall, solidly built brutes, but they have a real chip on their shoulder about how much smaller they are than other giants, resulting in a sort of a small man syndrome. Their own culture results in them being raised mean and cunning, but more on that in a minute. The last official stat block we have for the Verbeeg is from the Legacy of the Crystal Shard adventure, when 5th edition was just a baby called D&D Next. They are listed as a large size category giant wearing armor class 16 studded leather armor with a shield. They have on average 37 hit points with a maximum hit point total of 60. They have a speed of 40 feet per round, strength of 19, dexterity of 12, constitution of 14, intelligence of 11, wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 10. So they are generally superior to average human and have ferocious strength. Now, it's entirely okay to give them the giant strength feature, which means that they lift a level of weight as though they were a size category huge, which means an average Verbeeg can lift 2,280 pounds, just over a ton, comfortably. And they can carry easily 1,140 pounds, just over half a ton, all day. In previous editions of the game, they are large enough to use two-handed melee weapons built for normal-sized people with just one hand, and the spears and javelins that they build and use themselves are larger than a normal human finds comfortable, giving a person disadvantage on attack rolls with the weapons that the Verbeeg use. However, the Verbeeg doubles the damage dice for having these huge weapons. They are +6 to hit a single target up to 10 foot reach away, doing 2d6 +4 piercing damage with their spear. They very rarely throw the spear, but they do throw javelins. +6 to hit a close range target within 30 feet, up to 120 feet away with disadvantage on the attack roll, again inflicting 2d6 +4 piercing damage. Verbeeg will attack with shield and spear, holding a couple of javelins with their shield hand, sometimes, or strapped to their back. It should also be noted that the Verbeeg can't wear armor any more complicated than splint mail. Nobody makes armor in their size, and they would hate to wear it anyway because they favour being light on their feet and stealthy. I'll read directly from the book Giantcraft, which talks about their society in some detail. Verbeeg are notorious mercenaries and rogues. Though they have their own settlements and societies, they are frequently encountered alongside giants and ogres. In fact, outside of the ice spires, some Verbeegs have been known to actually claw their way to dominion over small hill or frost giant tribes, an obvious byproduct of their unrivaled cunning. Although the Furbolgs speak loudest of kin unity, the Verbeegs tend to make their half-brothers, the giants, the most uncomfortable. Their omnipresence in giant society, obvious intelligence, and penchant for underhandedness add up to make some of the more skittish members of the Jotunbrood a bit neurotic. A few particularly addled giants have convinced themselves that the Verbeegs have already united all of the kin and are carrying out a plan of infiltration aimed at conquering and enslaving all the giant races. Usually such paranoics also spread rumours of a vast unseen population of Verbeegs and a huge underground Verbeeg kingdom that is connected by a network of tunnels that crisscross the ice spires and spine of the world mountains. Of course, it's extremely doubtful that any of these rumours contain more than a smallest kernel of truth, though the Jotunbrood still have plenty to worry about. Many of the Verbeeg servants and labourers have been planted in the various giant steadings as spies at the behest of a mysterious figure who's actually no less than an avatar of the giant god Carantor himself. He's been operating in the Frozen Far for many, many years. Years ago, decades, centuries ago, Carantor actively recruited followers from all of the largest Verbeeg tribes and directed his priests to force the Verbeegs to follow the dictums of the mysterious stranger who occasionally came to visit, bearing treasure in exchange for promises of fealty. Only the priests are aware that the stranger, who takes a slightly different form in each settlement he visits, is actually Carantor's avatar. For hundreds of years now, centuries, spies have dispatched and been sent by the Avatar across the realms and been keeping Carantor informed on the comings and goings of many of Faerun's most prominent Jotunbrood settlements. Recently, the Avatar has also started dispatching some of his Verbeeg servants to collect specific artifacts scattered all across Toral's surface. Exactly what Carantor has in mind for the Verbeegs and how they assist him remains a mystery. Unlike Verbeegs, the Verbeegs are firm believers in the concept of the ordning, even though it's now lost to them. Through treachery, the greatest of their skills, the Verbeegs have designed a unique process for bettering themselves in their society. To ascend in the ordning, a Verbeeg must plot to discredit or defeat a superior. Such disposals are not necessarily violent. In fact, ousting a superior via slow, subtle scheme brings far more glory than brute force alone. One popular tale concerns two Verbeegs who played a single game of the ancient board game Wari for more than 40 years. Throughout the course of the game, the rivals often spent months planning and measuring their moves. Eventually, one of the Verbeegs sent his daughter to tempt his rival, a ploy that ultimately resulted in the marriage. The Verbeeg then lived happily with his rival's daughter for 30 years and raised a large family. As the end of the Wari game approached, however, the daughter started to behave strangely, acting the shrew and refusing to tend to her children. This broke her husband's concentration, allowing his rival to win the game and seize the higher ordning rank. Only after the game was over did the loser discover that his entire marriage was merely another facet of the plot. Besides treachery, Verbeegs are well known for their skill as thieves. Verbeegs are particularly well suited to this role since they have no concept of private property. To them, all things are owned by all people. Anything they can steal, they feel they deserve to own. Visitors foolish enough to sleep in Verbeeg settlements often awake to find their supplies, equipment, and sometimes even their clothing missing. So, there we have it. By the way, "Hey, that's mine" are considered fighting words in Verbeeg society. Verbeeg can be encountered mainly in the far north of Faerun, a vast stretch of dangerous territory that is largely left off the maps that most folks are familiar with regarding Faerun. I'll show it here, just to give you some idea that the stretch of Arctic and subarctic lands are at least equal in size to the entire western coast of Faerun, from Icewind Dale down the Sword Coast to the southern coast of Kalimshan, and the Verbeeg can live their whole lives up north, never having to venture into the civilized nations of the south beyond the mountains. But they do travel widely, much more so than most suspect. Their ability to move through human lands with a bit of impunity sets them apart from the rest of the giants and giant kin, and they make excellent brigands, scouts, and scoundrels. That being said, they can be born and raised in other cultures. It's not unheard of, and it is possible to play a more moderate, neutral, or good-aligned Verbeeg as a player character. This has long been an option for them. In fact, for a long period of time, the D&D books treated Verbeeg as half-ogres for that purpose. Verbeeg can make good guides for the frozen north of Faerun. They are not all evil cutthroats, and while they are not great historians as a culture, they do know where an interested explorer can find the bones of the past for a reasonable fee. Please hit that like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Patreon for all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some sweet merchandise from my Teespring shop, where you'll geek with pride. I'll have more giant videos and giant kin videos coming soon. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.